When people say I'm a terrorist, it's a certain frame of mind, I think, that you have to be in to do what I did.
On the 19th of October 1980, Doris Nuval planted a bomb in the Philippine International Convention Center. Her target was the feared dictator, Ferdinand Marcos.
You have to totally believe in what you're doing, no matter what. And I guess to a certain extent it is a fanaticism, and that's what they say makes up a terrorist. So if that's what they call me, then maybe I am. No, can't you get the source any other? Because what we tried was the...
Today, Doris Nuval is a leading executive in Filipino public television.
For all intents and purposes.
Yet the same Doris was once a member of an underground terrorist group and the most wanted person in the Republic. The Philippines is made up of over 7,000 islands, located almost 1,000 kilometers east of mainland Asia. Its culture has been shaped in part by its former colonial rulers, the Spanish and the Americans. Doris was born in 1952. Her father's military connections ensured the Nuval family of a privileged existence. Doris's formative years were spent in the cloistered environment of the Catholic education system.
My high school years I didn't have any political inclinations at all, but I was a student leader throughout, but my platform was to have more parties and to have boys come into because, it was like an exclusive girls' school.
In 1970, aged 18, Doris's middle-class illusions were shattered when she was exposed to the enormous inequities in Filipino society.
That was when the activism was starting, and at a certain point, I couldn't see the relevance of school to what was happening around. I continuously looked for other venues to sort of expand my knowledge about the political situation.
After joining a radical left-wing student group, Doris was involved in protests against the rule of President Marcos. Ferdinand Marcos became president following a popular victory in 1965. However, by 1969, during his second term, it was clear his popularity had waned.
Marcos promised the people that he would deliver them from poverty and from corruption. After so many years in power, with the complete control of the military, we found out he was the biggest oligarch of all. So you can just imagine the kind of corruption that prevailed.
Doris was faced with a dilemma. Her father, Santiago Nuval, had served with Ferdinand Marcos during the Second World War and considered the president a close personal friend.
I still think that Marcos is the most accomplished president we have. Because he is a buddy and I believe in him.
With my dad, we've always had a very special relationship. He's always understood where it was I came from, and he's always respected me, I think, for it.
That's why sometimes I jokingly tell friends, we want to see democracy at work, you come to my house. Because I'm 100% pro Marcos, Doris is 101% against Marcos.
Doris found herself being drawn deeper and deeper into an active political role and became a union organizer.
I guess it was kind of a messianic complex we had then. We were young and we thought we could do everything. And but at the time, I believed in what I was doing.
Doris organized a strike at the Manila gas works where workers were demanding a wage increase. Management responded by trying to break their picket line.
About 5 jeepney loads of men came in, and they were goons. Most of them were, holding lead pipes and stuff like that, and they all got off. So we were here not knowing what happened, and all of a sudden, just, everything broke loose. There was a lot of confusion, and, people were, hitting each other all the time. And finally, I don't know, before I knew it, there was someone on the floor. And I saw him die. I mean, I actually saw him die. Because it's the first time I'd ever been exposed to this kind of violence. And that's when I decided that I would commit myself to the cause. And I dropped out of school 2 days after that. And I committed myself to serving this country on that day.
At 18, Doris left home and for 2 years lived with the workers she was trying to help. Then on the 23rd of September 1972, everything changed.
I assure you that I am utilizing this power for the proclamation of martial law vested in me by the Constitution for one purpose alone, and that is to save the Republic and reform our society.
Marcos dispensed with democracy and with the military's backing assumed total control of the Philippines.
At the time, no one was really free to talk, or if you did talk against the administration or even about it, it was always in whispers. And almost all of the time, you look over your shoulder, who was listening in, and people were arrested. People were arrested left and right.
Martial law was a state-run reign of terror, where tens of thousands of Marcos's political opponents were arrested, and hundreds of people were salvaged, a euphemism for disappearance and death.
I contacted one of our leaders and I said that I wanted to go full-time underground and organize again wherever in the countryside. And I was told that that was not my role and that I was better off staying where I was until I'd be called on to serve.
The underground consisted of political groups that could no longer operate openly in Filipino society. Despite being forced into a secretive world of illegal and violent activities, their aim was to restore democracy to the Republic. Doris complied with her instructions, returned to college and completed her degree. After establishing a career in the Philippines Tourist Department, she married an American, becoming Doris Baffrey. Following the birth of her son Robert, the marriage ended, and she began a high-profile job in the Tourist Department's New York office. For 2 years, beginning in 1978, Doris continued her double life as government representative and member of the underground.
I was a schizophrenic. Yeah, I had a lot of conflicting emotions then, but then I would go back to my comrades and ask, when do I get the chance to really do something?
Then in 1980, Doris received a message from the April 6th Liberation Movement. They had just conducted a bombing campaign that terrorized metropolitan Manila. Doris was organizing the annual meeting of the American Society of Travel Agents, or ASTA, to be held in Manila that October, and was about to return to the Philippines.
At the time, in our circle, we think ASTA is a good target.
I was hoping I wouldn't get asked to do anything, but regardless, before I left for the convention, I prepared a last will, just in case I would get asked to do something. I left my baby with my sister in Houston.
Our contacts, our team is not capable of doing that, otherwise it's a suicide missile. So we try to look for a perfect sleeper that would seep into the security perimeter.
Soon after arriving home, the leader of her underground group contacted Doris.
And he requested me to plant the bomb during the opening address of President Marcos at the convention, because the world's eyes and ears are going to be on this convention, and if you explode something inside that convention hall with Marcos in it, that's going to make world headlines. And then so I said, okay, if you don't want me to serve any other way, and then I'll do it.
So by October 19, I assembled the bomb. Doris and I really didn't talk too much. I remember her in her violet dress and afro hair, and she's quite nervous at the time.
I remember I said, I don't know if I can do this. So I wanted to take a shot of whatever, vodka or scotch, just to get the nerve to do it. But I told myself, if you can't do this, if you're straight 100%, then it's not worth doing at all.
Assassination attempts became, part of the territory. I don't mean to sound jaded or to just brush it off and be dismissive, but you can't really live your life in fear of dying. It's a bit pointless. And my father, I think, remained a soldier at heart. The reality of death always was with him.
And there were really quite a bit of security. And they were all dressed up, all these young men in their crisp barong Tagalogs and everything. And I had the satchel with me, but I went through by, this is awful to say, anyway, by flirting with the, with the security guys, just telling them that, oh, you're so handsome when you get up, oh, yes, ma'am, and then I didn't have anything inspected. I remember very well, when I was walking through that walkway, it's like everything in the side just kind of blacked out. I mean, just really, really blacked out, and all I had in mind was that singular target, because my instructions were to put the satchel as close to Marcos as possible, as close as I could get. So all I had in my mind was that just one seat. The first two seats that I sat in, the people near me would always befriend me. Like, oh, you're from New York. I'm from Illinois. So how are you? And this and that. And I said, oh, God, this woman's going to get hurt if, I put it here. So I'd move again. And, the third place I moved to was, maybe 10 or 12 rows behind where Marcos was supposed to sit. And I told them to set the bomb for 7 o'clock. Marcos is going to be on that podium, and that's when it should go off. So at 7 o'clock, exactly, Marcos was on stage. He was telling the crowd that, as you can see, Manila and the Philippines is a very peaceful place to go to. There's no trouble, and, it didn't come off. So I kept looking around, to where I put my satchel, and nothing was exploding. And I said, oh, God, I thought it was a dud. And then Marcos came down the stage, and then the next number of the program was a video presentation on Filipinos and Americans, blood brothers. During the part when the cannons were going off on the screen, then the bomb exploded. Anyway, it was just a great big ball of orange, and of course the lights went on, and it was screaming and everything. And then when the lights went on, I just saw, because Marcos was there in the first row, and I just saw General Ver and the rest of his security. They were all on top of him. I just wanted to say yes.
The incendiary device that Doris planted was more symbolic than destructive. Although only designed to embarrass Marcos, the explosion injured 12 people.
For a while, I thought that I was scot-free because in the newspapers, pictures of the alleged terrorists or cartographic sketches actually came out. From male, Arab-looking, our typical image of a terrorist. And I said, my gosh, these people.
Marcos released so much money to really arrest people, buy information, until 1 week after, I got caught. I was tied, blindfolded, for 3 days in a motel naked, continuous interrogation. So I was able to realize that they're not going to kill me because they'll use me to point at other people.
6 o'clock in the morning or something, my mom came up to me. Florian, wake up. What? Why? The police are downstairs, the police are downstairs. And then, they want to arrest Doris.
There are some people downstairs, and they said you planted a bomb. And I said, Mom, what are you talking about? And then she says, I don't know, they're downstairs, you'd better go. And then I said, Mom, sabi ko, I want to sleep, just send them away. I said, and then so, no, she got out of the room, and as soon as she closed the door, I ran to the window and looked out, and there were about 5 or 6, of a mixture of military and civilian vehicles. And I said, oh, this is it.
The underground network's security had failed, and Doris was taken for questioning to the infamous Philippine military intelligence headquarters.
So this colonel says, so why are you here? And I said, you tell me. I didn't do, you arrested me. I didn't do anything. You tell me. He says, okay. He says, if you don't want to be cooperative, then why don't you stay in that room for a while? So they put me in this room, and there were a lot of torture implements, or the things you had heard and read about, electric wires. And that night, I don't even remember how long or how short it was. I was in that room because I ended up torturing myself. I mean, with thoughts of, I think the last straw was when the colonel threatened that my other comrades might get killed. He said it in such a way that you understood what he meant without quite saying it. But well, I confessed.
Doris was eventually sent to Camp Crame, a brutal military prison in Manila.
It just feels a bit strange, actually, to be here because this was my second home for more than 4 years. When I got locked up, I had to internalize it, that you were in here for good, because Marcos was young then and robust. And we didn't know when he would go, if he ever would go. So I psyched myself up to the point that I told myself I would be in here for life.
At the time, the American intelligence services were assisting Marcos crack down on Filipino dissidents operating from the United States. Doris received the first of a series of visits from representatives of the CIA and the FBI.
Of course, they couldn't get any information from me, and then one of them says, do you know what kind of power we have? He says, do you know that, that if you cooperate with us, we can actually change your identity, make you look like Gina Lola Brigida, set you up in any part of the world you want to get set up, and live in style, he says. And then I say, well, I'm sorry, I said, but I like my face, and I like my body, he said. And he just got so sick of it, so he tears off the page, crumples it, then he puts the sheet in front of me and says, just name your price. He says, just name your price. Then I said, so how much is the combined budget of the FBI and the CIA? That's my price. He said, God.
The American intelligence officers were convinced that Doris was a key link to anti-Marcos circles active in the United States.
The FBI guy said again, is there anything that's going to make you cooperate with us? And I said, no, nothing. And then he says, are you sure there's nothing that will make you cooperate with us? What about little hands, little feet? And then the other American goes, oh, mama. Then they started to mimic my son. My fear, if they had kidnapped my son. Yeah. For 9 months, I didn't see him. And they didn't know if I would. Yeah, so every night I slept with my son's picture under my pillow. That was the most difficult part, I guess. The first time we saw each other, our first talk was, he said, I'm just sorry for being so naughty that you had to leave me. So, he had the promise to be a good boy. just don't ever go away again. You know, he put all the blame on himself.
By the beginning of 1985, Doris had been incarcerated for over 4.5 years.
Though there were moments of depression, there was an inner peace, a real sort of peace that I don't find now, even outside. A peace with yourself that, again, you know, you did what you had to do, and had to take the consequences no matter what.
Throughout this period, Doris's father had been making pleas to Marcos to free his daughter. Finally, in February of 1985, Santiago Nuval's persistence was rewarded.
One day, we went to court, and then the judge says the charges are hereby dismissed. And he bangs the gavel, and I shout. And then, you know, and then my lawyer says, "Come on, you're gonna get charged for contempt, and you'll get back in jail." Because I kept banging on the table. I couldn't quite, you know, I couldn't believe it. I'm banging on the table and raising my fist and all that, you know.
Marcos extracted a price for Doris's freedom. To be released from prison, she must also leave the Philippines. In July 1985, Doris and her son left for exile in the Netherlands. Just 7 months later, in February 1986, in the most momentous event of modern Philippines history, the 20-year reign of Ferdinand Marcos was toppled by the People Power Revolution. The fall of the dictator meant that the exiled terrorist Doris could now return to a hero's welcome.
When she came home, it was a very big welcome at the airport. Her friends were there, we had placards and everything. And of course in the house we had yellow ribbons, and it was really amazing. I mean, the way she left and the way she returned. And of course she was screaming her head off, you know, she's as ecstatic as anything.
17 years after her return, Doris Nuval continues her involvement in the sometimes chaotic Filipino democratic process. For Doris, the issues that she fought for remain the same, but now she is working to change them from within the system.
So she won't be back this afternoon?
Her activism has taken on a new form.
Okay. I'll leave a note on her there.
She is now working for the Knowledge Channel, a privately funded educational television network.
I know it sounds like a cliche, but you know, we really can make a difference by trying to improve the quality of education, and thereby helping these children later on extricate themselves from the poverty they're in. We've been working very hard to bring Knowledge Channel to your city's public schools. Thank you very much for sharing in our belief in education and in our commitment. I almost feel ecstatic. I get a little hysterical. I mean, as you can see, I get quite carried away during these affairs. And I know, I've committed myself again to use that word. I don't want to stop seeking funds for at least until half the schools are provided with Knowledge Channel. And we're talking of 20,000 schools. So I only have 19,000 schools to go.
For Doris, there remains a direct link between today's challenges and her past actions.
I think when I did that, it was necessary at the time. If I had been asked to do something more radical, I really would have. It was the call of the times, and I heeded that call, as I'm heeding it now.